Today you can see that I am alive. That is the voice of Malawa Yousafzai. She's the Pakistani teenager who was targeted by Islamic extremists, the Taliban, literally targeted on the van that she was taking home from school just because she insisted on going to school and then talking about how all women and girls should be educated. You might remember that when she was shot in the head last October, it wasn't clear at all that she would survive. But she did, and she has lived to tell about it. She spoke out in a new video saying, "I can speak, I can see you, I can see everyone, and I'm getting better day by day. It's just because of the prayers of people, all religions and all faiths, all of you who prayed for me. And because of these prayers, I have a second life, and I want to serve humanity with my bravery." I ask all of us here a question. How many of us are willing to do something brave on behalf of all of humanity? It's kind of what I thought. Me either. A quote, "One huge act of bravery can make a big difference in countless people's lives, but it's through small daily acts of bravery that we shape our own." Another question. How many of us were brave enough tonight to come here by ourselves? Awesome. Now, the next question. Take a look around the room, for real. Like, look not just next to you, but behind you and like the guy in the back row and all over. Okay, now you can look up here. How many of you see someone that you don't know, but that if you were brave enough, you might go up to and introduce yourselves to? I see a lot of eyes going like, no way, no. That's not the next step, don't worry. Every moment we have a choice to be brave. I do not like conflict. In fact, sometimes I think I myself am a conflict phobic. Including making up that word, I will do almost anything to avoid getting into conflict with another person. As a result, especially earlier in my career, I would keep my real opinions to myself. I didn't want to get in trouble, and I thought that if I just went with the flow and just complied with the system and kept my mouth shut, I would get ahead. This was a pretty good strategy for quite some time, but it didn't really work out once people needed me and counted on me to lead. Why didn't I want to speak up? I could feign altruism by saying I didn't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but that would be a lie. The truth is, the reason I didn't speak up is I was afraid. It was all about me. I didn't want to be embarrassed. I didn't want to lose face. I didn't want to be wrong, and I didn't want others to think less of me. So I kept quiet. Funny thing is that I kept finding myself in situations where I had to speak up, and if I didn't, someone else would pay an awful price for my personal comfort. Years ago, I heard a story of a friend of mine who became the head of a huge publishing house and who, like me, hated conflict. But conflict arose, as it always does, and he had to confront one of his authors. The employee was pleasant and cooperative when my friend Eric spoke with him, but he was demanding, uncooperative, and downright nasty to the other publishing house staff. Finally, one of them came to Eric in tears and said, "I just cannot take this any longer." And Eric had to make a choice. He could be brave and call his employee out on his bad behavior, or he could be a coward and stop growing as a leader. Thankfully, Eric decided to confront him. To Eric's surprise, the following day, each of his staff had a personally handwritten note from this gentleman explaining just how apologetic he was, and that the true target of his anger was not at his own lack of confidence in his work and not at those who were around him. Eric felt a slight sense of comfort. After hearing of these notes and the bravery that Eric had put forth in his leadership, I learned an important lesson that day. I learned that bravery is not the absence of fear. Bravery is the willingness to act in spite of fear. A question. How many of us here are brave enough to do what it takes to be a leader? A quote. We can do what feels safe, or we can find the motivation to work towards what we really want for our lives. I'm sure that many of us here can relate to the notion that putting down our guards enough to love another person is a true act of bravery. I think it might even be one of the bravest things that we as human beings can do. As I think about it, I think that we have so many things in our lives that could be more brave to someone else, but that truly loving someone, truly letting down your guard, is one of the most scary. We know deep in our hearts that even the strongest love does not and cannot last forever. We are all mortal, and one day we will all leave this earth. So are we nuts for still pursuing love? No, I don't think we're nuts. We're just brave. Even knowing how fragile life is, we continue to love each other bravely. Bravery is all around us. It's between us, it's within us. So instead of a big act of bravery that impacts the world on a grand scale, I vote that we stop and admire our own personal courage and our own personal bravery and realize just how bold we are to love one another. The miracle of love is around all of us every day, and you are a part of making it happen. Imagine, where could we go? Where would our world be if we all deeply loved openly and loved with bravery? Question. Who in here has been brave enough to love another person? When Rebecca put up the questions at the beginning, Cantor Eskenazi said to me, when it said, how many of you are in a relationship, yes or no, he said, I won't take any credit, he said, there should be it's complicated box. The truth is, these relationships that we get in are always complicated. And that's why there's two people in them. Because people are not actions, and people are not things. People are human beings that change. When I used to think of bravery, I imagined people who stepped out of their comfort zone in the most fear-provoking of ways. Like MLK delivering his I Have a Dream speech on the steps of Lincoln Memorial in front of more than 200,000 people. Or Edie Windsor, who took her fight for equal marriage rights to the Supreme Court. But as I have met many amazing people and taken my own steps of courage, I see bravery all around me. Every day, in the little steps, in the mundane, in doing anything and everything when you are afraid. In thinking about my own story of bravery, I came upon a children's book called Courage by Bernard Weber. Anyone remember this book? Here are some acts of courage from the book. Courage is riding your bicycle for the first time without training wheels. Do you remember that moment? Totally. Courage is starting over. Courage is sometimes having to say goodbye. As I read these moments of courage, I was reminded of how brave we are in so many instances. When we step out of our comfort zone, no matter how small, there is fear and risk involved. But as we risk, there is potential for freedom and honesty in who we are and what we believe. Like telling a friend that they don't look good in that shirt. Or speaking up in a group when you know your opinion is different. Or, where's Rachel? Wearing yoga pants in public. Don't laugh, because many of us in this room are still really working hard on that one. The most courageous thing I have ever done is being me. Try it. I ask you, to look in the mirror and tell yourself that you are brave. When you tell yourself you are brave, say it like you believe it, even if you don't. Don't devalue those little steps of courage. Your brave steps don't just strengthen you, they'll inspire those around you. Like Bernard Weber, the author of this book, Courage, ends, he says, "Courage is what we give to each other." We are all so different. But we have so much to offer each other when we're willing to speak up, step out, or even wear yoga pants in public. What does your bravery look like? Here are some of my suggestions. Being brave enough to take responsibility. Whilst you can't always control your circumstances, you can always choose how to respond to them. Resist the impulse to blame your woes on others, and instead make the decision to own your life and own it powerfully and fully. Being brave enough to dream bigger. When you think of being brave enough to dream bigger, you will never be able to have your dream job or your dream life unless you first find the courage to dream big. Big enough to identify what your dreams are. Dare to create a vision for your life that is bigger than the one you've had up until now. Up until now, in your relationships, in your career, in your life in general. Dream bigger. Don't let fear keep you from connecting with what it is that inspires you most deeply. Third, being brave enough to speak up. Dare to speak up. Give voice to your concerns, your feelings, your thoughts. Engage in conversations that you've been hesitant to have before. Don't simply try to avoid things like I used to love to do, just so you wouldn't feel uncomfortable. Address important issues. Speaking up in ways that honor the dignity of others provides a means of building trust and deepening the quality of our relationships. It also enables others to know who you are, what you need, and what you truly care about. Last, 4, be brave enough to say no, something you brought up in tonight's texting. Sometimes we need to say no to the good in order to say yes to the great. However, finding the guts to say no first requires a person to be clear about what you want most to say yes to. It's important in our lives to be brave. It's important as Jews and in Rosh Hashanah and in these next 10 days between now and Yom Kippur to be brave. Awesome if you see something huge that's going to get you on the news and you can run into a building and save people, and you do. Awesome. But for the rest of us who sometimes struggle getting out of bed in the morning, choose to be brave. Choose to look at tomorrow as your next chance to define yourself and redefine yourself, and look at yourself for the first time in a long time for what's important to you and what matters to you. Look at the people around you and know these people could make a difference in your life, and we only have this one life to meet everyone. So what are we waiting for? Stop. Stop avoiding life. Be brave. And boldly step forward. No matter what you choose to do with who you are and how you want to be perceived, or how you choose to show your courage and strength, I challenge each of us here tonight, each of us with our own unique skills and our own unique fears, each of us throughout this Jewish New Year. I challenge every single person in here tonight and every person we tell who we were here tonight to go out and to be brave. Shana Tova.